everybody? Still Friend Show episode 89. We got a special guest in the building. One of the brightest young broadcasters and commentators in the game, Jack O'Hara. Appreciate you coming in, brother.
Justin, thank you so much, man. You're like the king of intros.
Really?
I saw your intro for Marcus Deegan. Coming on the show, and he was just like, man, like, mate, that was incredible. And I was waiting. I'm like, I better get a good intro. That was a good intro.
I appreciate it, man. You're a huge bright star in the game. Like, I've seen your content everywhere, and you get like the biggest interviews, I feel like, from someone that not quite has all that recognition yet, but is like on his way there. Where did everything start for you? Where'd you grow up?
That's like the most accurate thing that you could probably say in that right there too. But I grew up in New Jersey. We were talking about a little bit earlier, like right outside Manhattan, about 35 minutes outside New York City. Grew up a huge sports fan since I was 5 years old, dude. I wanted to be Michael Kay, broadcaster of the New York Yankees. Wow. I'm like, okay, like he gets paid to call Major League Baseball games. I don't want to get paid to call Major League Baseball games. Since then, it's like, all right, I had the normal childhood of playing sports. Well, not normal, privileged childhood playing sports, you know, had a good upbringing and played baseball, basketball, football, you name it. By the time I went to college, I'm like, I want something completely different. Left the East Coast entirely, went to Phoenix, Arizona.
For college?
For college,
wow.
Grand Canyon University. I've been in Phoenix ever since.
Go Lopes?
Go Lopes, man. We're on the rise. When I first got there, I had no idea. Like, I went out there to visit ASU and U of A, and then we stumbled upon this campus that was being completely renovated on our way back to our hotel room. And they're like, this is Grand Canyon University. I'm like, I've never heard of it.
What year was this?
2016.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Which was my senior year in high school. And then next year I was there, and it was the best decision I ever made.
Did you notice how many Hawaiians are out there?
A ton. My buddy, who's whiter than me, white as a ghost, wore a lei when he walked for his graduation. I'm like, why the fuck is this kid wearing a lei right now? Like, did I miss something? Is he a part of some Samoan dynasty that I never heard of?
Loved him and gave it to him.
But I guess it was like some sort of sentimental thing.
Right,
so
right.
After I said, why the fuck you wearing a lei? It was just, oh, my grandma. I'm like, okay, cool.
Was he from Hawaii or Hawaii ties?
No,
Oh, no
he's
way.
from Oakland, man. He's from the Bay. Not even close.
So you get the GCU, you're already studying journalism, or what's your major at that time?
Yeah, we studied, got a bachelor in journalism, did sports broadcasting for 4 years there. And at GCU, it's not like it's ASU Walter Cronkite where like 500 people are all competing for the same job. There were like 3 of us getting to call all the games.
Wow.
Baseball, softball, men's and women's basketball, men's and women's volleyball, soccer. So we got to call hundreds of games for a 4-year period. So we actually got to work on our craft, and we all liked each other too. We were like a family almost working together. I loved my experience working in the broadcast department there because we got the opportunities to work on ourselves and just a great group of people that were like-minded and really wanted to work hard and continue to work hard in this industry. I still have friends who are back home where they originally came from who are still broadcasting and still trying to work their way up the ladder. So like we're all fired up. We're not like people who, I mean, and there's nothing wrong with this, but there's a lot of people that'll fizzle out, be like, oh, you were a film major. What happened? They're like, oh, I work in finance now. You know, it's like
Yeah.
money talks, and I understand it, but like I love what I do. Like I just did a podcast this morning saying that like I would do this for a chicken leg, you know? I'll do this if I never make more than 5 figures in my entire life doing it, because I just love this. This is all I've ever wanted to do with my life. I get to meet people like you. I get to meet people from like all over the country getting to do this. So journalism for 4 years, broadcasting, signed a freelance deal with ESPN to call college baseball games and college softball games. And then in the meantime, I think it was senior year in high school, started this thing called podcasting that I really didn't have much knowledge in. I just wanted to be a talk show host and interview my heroes. So I did it. And 8 years later, here we are talking.
Dude, that's so crazy
Yeah.
that you mentioned that, being so young and already being 8 years into the podcast.
No
game.
idea what I was doing either. My brother's a musician, so he had like all the equipment, right? Had cameras, he had the microphones. There's just cable cords everywhere in our basement. We click record, we're looking at each other, and we're just like, oh shit, this is hard. This is why they get paid. Like the big guys get paid the big bucks because like this isn't easy. Like we prepped nothing. We're like, all right, we're just gonna hit record and start talking and be entertaining as hell. We had no idea what we were doing.
Dude, that's crazy. So who at that time, what podcast were you watching?
Nothing. I didn't even like podcasting to me. I'm like, what is a podcast? Because like, I guess it's a talk show, but like on audio, because that was before COVID, before Zoom really popped off. So like video content wasn't even like on my mind. It was just all audio. Again, just grew up watching baseball, ESPN, Fox Sports, WWE, huge professional wrestling guy. I'm like, we're just going to talk about the things that we like to talk about. Did it on audio for the first 3 years before COVID hit. And then I got an opportunity to talk to some bigger names because nobody had an excuse not to talk to me during COVID. So I took advantage of that and reached out to whoever I could reach out to and get contact information from, and you build relationships and you meet people and so on and so forth. But you get the opportunities to interview these big names over Zoom, and then you're like, oh, I could turn this into like video content on YouTube, and then that becomes TikTok Reels and Instagram Reels, and now everybody does podcasts for clips these days. But there's also people who just do long-form shows, and that's why I kind of got into this, to do long-form storytelling interviews that I can also clip up for social media because you just need it in this day and age, right?
So how did you guys continue on the podcast when you moved out west?
So they say the average podcaster lasts like 7 episodes. My brother lasted like 7 episodes. So I just did it for by myself.
No
after
way.
That.
So just solo guns.
So I was 17. He was 14 years old.
Okay.
So it's like you pick things up, you put them down, right? We're like, I always wanted it. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to do this to the day I die, wherever it goes. Where he was more so just like supportive younger brother. We were living together at the time. But when I went off to college, it's like it just got difficult. He's a musician. He has his own passions. So he went on and did his own thing. Where I just continued to do this. I would do just solo podcasts by myself talking about stuff. I would have guests call in. There was one time in college, I was a sophomore in college, there was this baseball player. His name's Bobby Abreu. He used to play for the Philadelphia Phillies, New York Yankees, New York Mets. He was living in Florida at the time. I was in Arizona. It was the day that we were supposed to do the podcast, and he called me at like 4 a.m., which was 7 a.m. his time. So he had just gotten out of bed. Day of the podcast, calls me up. It's 4 a.m. my time. And I'm waking up. I'm like, oh my God, Bobby Abreu's calling me at 4 o'clock in the morning. What is Bob? And I grew up a Yankee fan. So like I grew up watching this guy on TV, and at the time I'm like, oh, this is one of my first big baseball interviews. I'm like, yeah, what's up, man? He's like, yeah, so we're doing the podcast today. Like, what time you need me to fly in? I'll get the helicopter ready. I guess he has his own helicopter. And I just imagined like a helicopter flying over my dorm room and what Grand Canyon University would have thought of that. I'm like, no, man, we can just do it over the phone. It's just easier. He's like, oh, yeah, man, that would be easier. All right, click. I'm just thinking to myself, oh, my God, like this guy thinks I'm like a legitimate podcaster.
Wow.
Which is funny because you get into this, everybody and their mother has a show these days, right? So it's like some people think it's awesome. Other people almost like feel bad for you. They're like, oh, you're doing a podcast. Good for you, buddy. I hope that turns out
So
well,
accurate.
right? It's like you're living out of your mom's basement. And I'm like, even at that time where I was like 15 episodes into my show as an 18-year-old kid, I'm like, wow, this baseball player thinks I'm big enough to have my own like helicopter landing spot at my studio. And I'm like waking up, my roommate's like, who was that? I'm like, just a guy I grew up watching, says that he's going to fly over our campus to do a podcast with me in our dorm room. But it's just interesting. And I mean, I'm very blessed to be able to do this because like it's Monday afternoon and we're having a conversation with, you got your F3 sponsor here. We got a kick-ass studio here in your office, and other people are just stuck at a desk right now, just kind of figuring out life and just taking a paycheck. So
Right.
I'm very grateful to be here.
It's amazing. I'm so blessed to have it. It's so funny when you bring up the podcasting. It's almost like the new school of being a rapper, right?
It is. Oh, dude, I'll, and it's so crazy because I'll have people who will DM me being like, hey, my friend's a startup rapper, just came out with his first single. He'd love to come on your podcast. And like, even then I'm like, come on, man. Really? Like, good. Like, I wish you luck, but like, whatever. But it is true. Like, you say like, oh, what do you do for a living? I'm almost embarrassed. I'm like, what else can I say right now? I'm in sales, technically. I'm in media. I'm in broadcast. I never want to say I'm a podcaster because it can go one of two ways. Either they're like, oh, that's interesting. Like, what kind of show do you talk? And other people are like, oh, dope. Cool. When they're thinking,
Oh, you do a podcast?
they're just thinking like, okay, cool, whatever, man. Like my cousin's got a podcast.
Exactly. So how did you start initially getting those big guests?
Like it was COVID, dude. Without COVID, I don't know if I would have been able to like meet certain people and like really get it to a point where I could interview a lot of the names that I want to interview. I'm still like on my way trying to break through to like the next level of celebrities and like people I just got into this interview. But it was COVID when like nobody had an excuse not to talk to anybody. I'm like, I'm just going to reach out to whoever I can. And the worst that they could say is like, no.
So what did that look like? Instagram DMs or?
At the time, it was just email, mainly email, because I had a few relationships at that point, my senior year in college, with a few publicists that worked for like WME and a couple of other big outlets.
Nice.
So I think it was Jordan Belford was the first one that I got to do just over the phone, because he did a seminar in Atlantic City. It was supposed to be a seminar turned into a webinar because of COVID. So over the webinar, everybody that attended got to ask him one question. My one question was, you want to come on my podcast? And he was just like, yeah, I can take time. You can pick my brain, whatever. I'll carve out some time. He gave me like 45 minutes.
Wow, nice.
And I think I asked him 2 questions, and he just rambled on about himself for 45 minutes. I'm like, this is just good content to have. Like, it really is. Like, I'm just grateful that he even said yes to me. And
It's
I
the
took that
freaking
chance.
Wolf of Wall Street,
And I
man.
took that chance, right? It's like, what's the worst that he can say? No? And he said yes. So I'm like, who else would be willing to say yes? I think in that COVID year alone, I was able to get Drake Bell.
No way, wow.
Chad Michael Murray, who's an actor. Rob Schneider. David Spade.
Wow.
Corey Taylor from Slipknot. Just like a lot of really fun, like the lead singer of Alice in Chains. I'm a huge rock and roll guy, so like a lot of rock singers. I was able to get Dave Matthews from the Dave Matthews Band. Just like so many like cool names that I'm
Not
like,
to derail us too much, but that's Drake Bell before the documentary came out, right?
exactly. And he was talking very kindly about Dan Schneider in that interview that I did with him
That's
too,
interesting.
which is crazy looking
Wow.
back at it. I mean, Drake Bell's had his fair share of problems since then too. But
So what did you think when that documentary came out and he released everything that obviously kind of went against what he told you in the interview?
makes sense. I mean, I'm a guy that he never met before. It's like he's not going to say anything like too revealing, but I don't know. Looking at Dan Schneider, the history of Nickelodeon, kids television.
Now, did you
But
get
those-
the vibe at all that he was kind of just putting up a facade kind of thing, not really being...
Not really. I mean, he was like playing his guitar the entire time. He was like strumming his guitar. We were just talking music, a little bit of Drake and Josh, a little bit of Dan Schneider. Like it was like a 20-minute interview, but he was like very relaxed. He was like in Puerto Rico, hat backwards, just kind of like hanging out, not even like taking himself too seriously. But I also wasn't trying to like ask insanely hard-hitting questions. You know, I'm like, I get Drake Bell for the next 20 minutes. I just want to hang out with the guy.
Right. So up to date, who is your favorite interview?
I got 2. Tommy Chong, who's just like Cheech and Chong.
No
man.
way.
Awesome. The other one I had last year at Hardin Cannabis Dispensary was Lisa Ann,
That's huge.
who is just an awesome person. Just like so knowledgeable about so many different things. It was a 2-hour interview.
Wow.
And I don't think we talked about porn till the last 15 minutes of it. It was like all sports, all business. We talked about like baseball trading cards for 30 minutes.
No way.
So it's like,
Wow,
what a great person.
I didn't know she was that well versed.
She's so smart.
Wow.
Which makes her like 10 times more attractive, right?
Yeah, I mean, she's like one of the most famous porn stars of all time.
Arguably like the LeBron of porn stars, right?
Definitely up there.
Especially on social media. She's done a great job marketing herself amongst everybody else. And they all travel here, man. Like I have a lot of, like one of my main connectors I was out here works in the porn industry. And he's like, I'm going to send you a link to my friend. Her name's Lisa Ann. We can get her on your podcast. I'm like, dude, I know who Lisa Ann is. We can get her on the podcast for sure. But she's just was a down to earth person. I'll DM her every now and then just to like say what's up. She was like talking. She's like, oh, when you're in New York, you should come to a Yankee game, go to a Mets game. I'm like, oh, that's great. You know, because like you just don't get that type of experience, like just working a normal job, man. I'm very grateful that I got the opportunity and the gift from the Lord Himself to give me like this passion in life to do this stuff, because I've been able to meet so many cool people, and which have resulted in like really cool opportunities.
Mm-hmm. So what did your parents do growing up?
So my dad works in medical sales. My mom's a hospice nurse, which for anybody who knows that field, not easy. You're just dealing with people who are kind of on their last leg.
Right.
For the most part. It's not the entire job, but like she was working like 80 hours a week doing that stuff on call when we were kids. She would get a call at 10 o'clock at night, have to go to the hospital, and Like, it's just not an easy, and she's just like an angel, you know? Like, she's like the best mom ever, you know? So, like, it's just like a very, like, I feel like her work ethic was instilled in me in a big way. A lot of ways my father too. You know, he was always like our baseball coach growing up, football, all of that. He was kind of more of the disciplinarian. Or my mom worked a tough job, but she was like a total goody two shoes at home. Like never cursed, never said anything, just like very innocent. Where my dad was kind of the tough one.
So where did you get it to where you weren't worried about the monetary chase and it was more of chasing what you love to do?
Oh, that's all it was. When I first started it, I was 17 years old. I wasn't thinking about money. I was thinking about I wanted to be a talk show host. Even throughout college, I'm like, I'm getting paid to be a sports broadcaster in college. So I have money coming in on that side and working a ton of other odd jobs while also getting like, I mean, my parents paid for college. So it's like, that was a big help. It wasn't until I graduated where I got my first big sponsorship deal from Floyd Mayweather's gym, Mayweather Boxing and Fitness, where I'm like, oh my God, I can make more than a few $100 to, you know, do a podcast consistently. That was like my first big deal. And then I really got into it. I'm like, how can we provide more value for potential companies to bring in more revenue and this and that and that. And through trial and error, I mean, there's been like a lot of opportunities where it's just like the numbers weren't there, so people didn't want to invest. But then there were other companies that are like, you do this, that, and that for us, we'll give you X amount of dollars, right? So you work out how much value you could provide for someone, despite not having 1 million subscribers on YouTube, right? I was having this conversation earlier. It's like people will post reels today, and if they don't get like more than 10,000 views, they'll delete the reel because they're like, nobody saw it. It's like, dude, put 10,000 people in a room. It's a lot of people that saw that. Right. If you got 300 people to view your reel, that's 300 people, right? All you need is 1, 2, or 3 people to invest in whatever your product is, and you know, there's your money for the month. Mm-hmm. So really wasn't until I want to say 2021 when I graduated school that I really started looking at the business side of all of this. It was all passion. It was all just like, I love talking. I love telling stories. I love creating content. Was a journalism major and a film minor. So I want to make documentaries. I'd love to put together short films, feature film. Like I just like my brain's constantly going in that direction. So it wasn't until a few years ago when I started making some money doing it, and at the same time realized how many bills I had to pay now that I was kind of on my own, apartment living, house living, car payments, all of this stuff that comes up. It's like, yeah, if I want to do this, I got to figure out how to be a valuable businessman.
So how did you start to construct things approaching things from the business side?
I was very fortunate to have people come to me at first. We'll give you X amount of dollars for this. And I was like, oh, cool. Absolutely. You know, and I got lucky.
At what point did that happen?
4 years into the podcast. 4 years into the podcast. So this was 4 years ago. And after that, I'm like, okay, that's one spot. How can we get more?
So that was during the COVID year.
It was like a year after, 21.
A year after, okay.
And then I started reaching out to multiple different places. Like, this is what we provide. This is what we can do for you. Ad space. We can put your merch on screen. We can do that. Introduce you to people for your business for X amount of dollars. Would get turned down 9 times out of 10. But it's like anything else. It's a numbers game. That's where sales comes in. Mm-hmm. It's like, now you're a salesman. And I'm still learning, right? Like, I've worked odd jobs in the past. I might have to work odd jobs in the future doing this. But I've been able to get the experiences that are needed in order to continue to grow, because I think the more real you are with people, and I like the words like real and authentic get thrown around these days in the most unreal and unauthentic ways. If you're just like you and like, this is what I'm after, this is what I'm trying to pursue, and this is what I need, I think people who are good people who have had the same drive and kind of had similar experiences as you, like if a 40-year-old looked at me and be like, yeah, dude, when I was 25, I was grinding too, and all I wanted to do was conquer what I wanted to conquer. It's like those people will invest in you and believe in you, right? And since coming out here, I got to work with Blue Wire closely for about a year, get to shoot out of the wind in that studio. It's like you learn a lot. There's a lot of people who do business for the right reasons. There's a lot of people who do business in a different way that you might not totally agree with. But a lot of people all have the same goal. They have the same vision. They just want to do what they want to do and be successful at it and make good money and just like do what sets their soul on fire, which again, not everybody gets to do.
So do you have a hard time separating that, like the passion side of it and the business side of it?
Not really, because like honestly, the business side of it, when you're not making a ton of money in it and like you got bills to pay, it's like, okay, that becomes a passion. How do I make more money? How do I provide more value so I can do this full time comfortably and continue to go after the things I want to do? Because you could be passionate about something all day long. If you can't fund it, you can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can do it, but on a very small scale. Like if I had nothing coming in, I couldn't have made this trip out here to talk to you and I could have like done a Zoom interview, but those aren't fun, man. You want to come to the studio. You actually want to meet people, right?
Completely.
It's a complete, like you didn't truly meet someone if you did a interview on Zoom. Like when you meet someone in person, it's completely like you developed a relationship, sometimes friendships with some of these people. It's a completely different game. And when you're able to do that, people want to like, oh, like you want to get here? I can connect you with this guy who's looking for a sponsor. Like he's looking to invest in someone. Then you actually get to meet people and pick up on their vibes. You can't really pick up on that body language and vibe over Zoom.
Right. I mean, you're basically on a FaceTime at that point.
Exactly.
And when you're watching it too, you're just watching a FaceTime.
And you're just watching the camera lens, because if you're not, you're just like looking down like this. Like you'll look back on the Zoom and it's like you're looking at your guest, but like to your audience, you're just like looking down like this. Like you have to look into your camera lens. You can't even look at the person you're talking to in order to make it seem like you're talking to them.
It's super inauthentic feeling, right?
I mean, it is what it was during COVID, but now that I'm like, I want to be like Rogan, man. He gets his guests in studio and he actually gets to meet them.
Yeah.
You know?
And I feel like the interview just works so much better.
It does, man. Like this is way better than anything over Zoom.
Right? And that Zoom lag and not having like a real-time conversation.
That was the worst. I remember in college sometimes having a guest on and then all of a sudden they would just like freeze halfway. I'm like, oh, I really hope it comes back before the end of like their statement that they're making. Cause then it's just like, are you there? What's going on? Jack?
That's the worst.
It's like,
how did you, because I don't want to twist it up too much, but I'm super interested because I am not into WWE or professional wrestling at all.
Which is crazy because you're into MMA.
Right. But okay, growing up for me, I was introduced into MMA, I think 4 years old. UFC 1, my dad showed it to me on tape and I was a fan ever since. How did you get into professional wrestling?
When I was a little bit older. A lot of kids got into it when they were like kids, like 7, 8, 9 years old, like Friday Night SmackDown, Monday Night Raw. My brother watched it very intently. And I remember thinking like, oh my God, these guys are like grown men just like kicking the snot out of each other. Like I didn't know any different. Like when I first started watching, I'm like, this stuff's real. Like they're in a ring, like drop kicking each other and like throwing each other through tables and stuff. Like this is awesome. And then you grow up and realize that like it's acting. It's a soap opera with wrestling as its background. But I think I was 10 or 11, 12 years old. My brother was watching it and we were on family vacation. I'm just like, all right, I'll sit down and watch it. And like, I think it was like right before WrestleMania, which is like their biggest event. It's like their Super Bowl of events. So they bring out all the big stars for that. And I just remember watching it and being like, this is interesting. Like The Rock was back cutting a promo in the ring. And I'm like, this is entertaining. I'm like, that's Dwayne Johnson, the actor, you know, like that's interesting. John Cena, The Undertaker, like all these guys. So you kind of like know just from like having a brief like knowledge of what WWE was. And I remember thinking like, this stuff's good. I just started watching week after week. I was sneaking it though. I was like a 12-year-old kid who was embarrassed to watch WWE. I'm like, this is for kids. I remember like watching it and I heard my like dad coming down the stairs and around the corner. And I would like flip it back to the Yankee game. Just watching the Yankees. Years later, he was like, oh, dude, I always knew like you were sneaking it. You know, like you were sneaking professional wrestling. And then later that year, I was like I'm like watching it every week. My brother's watching it every week. And a guy who fought in the UFC, who's a huge WWE guy, CM Punk. It sucks because CM Punk is a WWE legend, but a UFC failure, right? So it's like we look at him through completely different lenses. And he dropped this very truthful, what they call the pipe bomb promo here at MGM in Vegas in 2011, talking about how Vince McMahon is just like an old man who's just like out of touch with the company. He's like, this company's going to be better after Vince McMahon's dead, but it's just going to get taken over by his idiotic daughter and his doofus son-in-law and the rest of his stupid family. And it was just saying like all of this off-color stuff, which years later you find out was off the cuff. It was not scripted. He was just going off the rails, got suspended, came back, and turned it into a big storyline. And that's why CM Punk's like a legend, because he just speaks his mind, and he kind of like blurred the lines between fake soap opera and like real life drama. So like that got me hooked on a completely different level, which years later, 13 years later, that was one of the best years in pro wrestling ever up until this year. Right now it is on fire. Like the best time to be a pro wrestling fan is in 2024, because now they're partnered with the UFC, with Endeavor and TKO. I think it's like TKO Group Holdings or whatever, Holdings Group. Just a ton of revenue coming in for both WWE and UFC. I think they're putting on like multiple event weekends where like a UFC pay-per-view is going to be on a Saturday, WWE pay-per-view on a Sunday in the same city. So like they're putting those things together. But pro wrestling is my jam, man. Like I love just the storytelling aspect and all like the drama that comes with it.
Who are your top 5 pro wrestlers of all time?
Top 5 pro wrestlers of all time got to be Stone Cold Steve Austin, CM Punk, Chris Jericho, who's actually like my number 1 aspiring guest on the podcast. The reason I started the podcast at 17 was because of the guy named Chris Jericho. Stone Cold Steve Austin, CM Punk, Chris Jericho, Bray Wyatt, who unfortunately passed away last year. He was only 38. He was like the Stephen King of WWE. He was just an unbelievably charismatic and creative mind, and he just threw up everything that was in his brain into his characters. Like he had this like very like cult leader type character where like everybody kind of looked like they were in Duck Dynasty. He had like the giant beard, dreadlocks, kind of talked very like, it was kind of cool, but also kind of like creepy. He was in like a rocking chair that would creak back and forth, like just like kind of like horror vibes. And then he went away for a year, came back, and his new gimmick was that he was kind of like this like Blues Clues, Wiggles type like talk show host, where like he dressed like Mr. Rogers and he was all like happy and giddy. And they did like these vignettes, like these videos of him in what they called the Firefly Funhouse, where he had like all of these puppets with him. He was like a legit like Mr. Rogers type talk show host. And week after week after week went by, and you're like, this guy was such like a really like weird and eerie character, and now they turned him into this. But as the weeks went on, you're like, oh, this is gonna get dark at some point. And he had like this demonic alter ego that he called the Fiend, where he had like this demonic pale white mask, and he put on like yellow contacts, kind of like Sith eyes, and he was just like the creepiest. I'll pull up a picture for you. It was just like the creepiest alter ego character, and he was like completely indestructible. It would light him on fire, and he would come back and kick everybody's ass. Like he was just probably one of the most mesmerizing and charismatic WWE superstars of all time. And then I'm trying to think: Stone Cold Steve Austin, CM Punk, Chris Jericho, Bray Wyatt. Here's kind of like the alter ego look. That's the Mr. Rogers character on the left, and then the Fiend on the right.
Matt, how quick you pulled that up.
Yeah, dude. Oh my God. Like I said, I could talk about this stuff for days. Those are definitely my top 4. I mean, The Rock is on a whole nother level when it comes to promos. John Cena's a guy you got to respect in any facet that he does. Roman Reigns with what he was able to do. I like the guys that got into it that weren't necessarily picked to get into it. Because like John Cena is jacked and did all the right things. The Rock is as charismatic as ever. Like there's the guys that are the superstars, but then there's like the grungy guys that nobody ever thought would make it. Like CM Punk looks like me or you, you know? Like he's not like a gift. He doesn't have an athletic build. He doesn't have like that it factor, but he can talk on a microphone like nobody else. And it's so entertaining to watch. There's a guy named Kevin Owens I really like, Sami Zayn. I would say it goes Stone Cold Steve Austin, CM Punk, Chris Jericho, Bray Wyatt, and then the 5th one is the guy running the company right now, Triple H. So Triple H took over the company from Vince McMahon, who was the chairman and CEO for the entire duration since WWE started. But he had sex trafficking allegations. I'll just say that within the last couple of years, had to step down as CEO, is completely out of the company now. And Triple H, who CM Punk referred to as his doofus son-in-law, is now running the company. So, and that's the other thing about the CM Punk promo is that everything he said in that promo turned out to be true 15 years later. So everybody can resonate with it. But Triple H, one of the greatest wrestlers of all time, comes out to Motorhead, just like intense, badass, jacked, six-pack like type wrestler. Married the boss's daughter, but he's like a brilliant businessman running the company now. And it's just like insanely inspiring to see. As someone like starting their own thing, wanting to get into business and understanding the business side of things, watching him is awesome.
You're talking about Vince getting kicked out of the company.
Yeah.
Do you think it was right for Brock to be outcasted as well, Lesnar?
I don't know if you've read like the exact documents that were released, but it said that a former, I think it was like current mega WWE superstar, former UFC fighter was involved in the sex trafficking case. Now, there's been multiple UFC stars that have crossed over to WWE and vice versa. We've seen it. Brock Lesnar was probably the first. CM Punk going to UFC and getting his ass kicked by Mickey, what's his name? Mickey Gall.
I was not going to be able to get it right.
He had the dumbest walkout song of all time, the Hey Mickey song. And then Michael Jackson. Remember Mike Jackson? He lost to by decision in 2018, and Mike Jackson got fired after that because he was like being such a dick in the fight. Dana White's like, you'll never see Mike Jackson in UFC ever again.
That's right. Okay, yeah, I remember this.
What was the question? Vince and Brock. So Matt Riddle was another one. UFC went to WWE. Ronda Rousey from UFC to WWE. There's another one who was a UFC fighter who's a current woman star in WWE right now. I'm blanking on her name. There's been multiple. So when you read that, I'm like, that could be anybody. Matt Riddle's got a weird past. But like Brock Lesnar was the guy that everybody just assumed, I think.
And isn't it just because he's no longer anywhere around the company?
So if you ask Triple H, he'll have press conferences and journalists will ask, what's going on with Brock Lesnar? And he'll be like, Brock's still with the company. He's just at home in Saskatchewan waiting for the call. So like, in other words, Brock's still with the company, but we're not using him until this investigation either finds out that he was a part of it or he wasn't a part of it. Because if he's a part of it, he's gone. But if he's not, he's coming back because he's one of the biggest draws WWE's ever had. So he's still with WWE at the moment, but I think they're paying very close attention to what's been going on there because that is insanely serious. But there's also like, she didn't use his, like the woman, I forget her name. She didn't use Brock Lesnar's name.
And to be fair, Brock's been around his daughter very closely, coaching her with like the track and field throwing and whatnot lately.
Yep.
That's interesting. I haven't heard anybody make that distinction recently.
I mean, that's just what I've read too. You know, like they didn't use his name, but also it is like you can't, because if he is home and they're not using him, it was him. And I think people suspect that maybe he did have something to do with it. I don't know, but time will tell. I think they're trying to salvage all of that privately moving forward instead of publicly, but I don't know. I hope he wasn't a part of it because he's such a draw.
Right.
And there's so many big breakout stars in WWE right now that he would have a phenomenal match with in the ring. There was this group called the Steiner Brothers in WWE, just jacked athletes. And they have a nephew whose name is Bronson Steiner, who goes by Braun Breaker in WWE. He's got the Brock build, but he's like 5'10", former running back for the Baltimore Ravens too.
Okay,
just
wow.
insane agility, but also insane strength, kind of like Brock. Where like Brock's like 280 or whatever, but he also can run like a cheetah. Like I don't even know how do you even teach that?
Can't.
He's just a different breed of a
Built
human
different.
being. Just a different human being, right? There was one quote. There's two quotes from Brock Lesnar that are my two favorite quotes in the entire world. One, he did a promo with a guy named Heath Slater on Monday Night Raw. Heath Slater's whole gimmick at the time was that he was broke and he needed a big match because he's like, I got kids. He's got like 9 kids, right? He's like, I got kids, man. I need to support. And Brock's like, you got kids? I got kids. Get in the ring, man. And gets in the ring. And Brock Lesnar's a heel, a bad guy at this time. So like, oh, what's Brock going to do? And Brock never talked either. So Paul Heyman, who's like a great manager, was Brock Lesnar's manager and did all the talking for him. But Brock grabbed the mic. He's like, you got kids? I got kids. Get in the ring. Let's talk it out. Heath Slater gets in the ring. Brock steps right up to him, looks him dead in the eye, and just goes, I don't give a shit about your kids. Like, and this isn't an era of WWE where it's PG. Like, you don't say shit like that on national television. So the crowd just like blows up, and then Brock Lesnar just beats the crap out of this Heath Slater guy. The other one was, I think it was like right before SummerSlam, because this was in a time where Ronda Rousey just came over. Brock, obviously, this was when Brock fought Mark Hunt at UFC 200, which was like a crossover deal because he was with WWE at the time. But Vince McMahon allowed Dana White to let Brock fight, which turned out to be a big miss because Brock failed his drug test and then Mark Hunt won, right? After the decision was turned. And Brock Lesnar was talking about the possibility of Conor McGregor coming over to WWE because Conor McGregor's talking shit on Twitter all the time, right? At the time, it was Twitter. It's X now, but it's still Twitter, right? And Brock Lesnar was like, I take shits bigger than Conor McGregor. He's not going to kick anybody's ass if he comes over here, which is so true because when you think about it, Conor has made most of his money with his mouth, but he is like 5'8", 150 pounds. Like, I mean, he's like 190 now from the pictures that I've seen. But like, those are my Brock Lesnar whenever he gets on the microphone because he doesn't talk a lot. It's not his strong suit, but when he does talk, it's just entertaining as hell. He's just like that country cowboy.
Yes, I love still
machine.
hearing it. You can hear that farm boy.
Because now he's got like the faux hawk thing where he has like the rest of his head is shaved like mine, but up top he like grew out his hair and put it in a ponytail.
And he looks like a Viking.
And he has the big beard.
That's
just
right.
looks like, I'm like, dude, that guy is just a world beater. Like, who in their right mind would ever piss that guy off?
I guess just Conor because he's insane.
Conor is insane, man. What do you make of the UFC 303 fight getting canceled?
I think it's a very, very calculated and smart idea for Conor to have pushed the fight back. And it sucks for all of us. I'm a huge Conor fan. You want to see him fight as soon as possible and as many fights as we can while he's still close to his prime. But
I mean, it's been 3 years.
It's such a huge injury, though. You know what I mean? Especially for a guy like him where his movement's already been compromised. He already doesn't move anything like he used to in his prime. Doesn't kick nearly as much as he used to. So I think he needs to be peak 100% to have a chance at these top guys like he used to.
Did you hear Chael Sonnen's take on the whole thing?
Now, what did Chael say?
Chael says that he's going to rehab, and that's why they had to cancel the fight.
Oh, come
And I
on.
think that's just his thought. I don't think there's any speculation or fact into that. But he was saying that Conor McGregor is like off his rocker, and he needed to go to rehab and get some shit sorted
I mean, he
out.
definitely is, but we've seen the X-ray, we've seen the pictures and the swelling of it. Unless they're photoshopping all of that, I don't think they're going to that length.
Do you think Conor McGregor, because like as a UFC, because I'm a UFC fan, but like, and I told you, me and Ben Bane Davis called an MMA fight before. I'm not great with like the technicality and terminology. I've also been told by like a dozen people in the last year that I sound just like John Anik. And I don't know if that's a compliment or I'll take it as a compliment.
There is a little bit of Anik there. It's a huge compliment. He's one of the best
I'll take it
commentators
because if
of all
anybody
time.
needs me, I'm there. I got to start making content where it's like I take UFC fight clips and just take out his voice, and then I just verbatim say what he says and see if people can tell the difference. Do you think that? Because as a fight fan, I'm watching the press conferences. I'm watching because a lot of these guys who make the big money are the guys that can market themselves, which makes UFC so interesting in comparison to other sports. Like, you can't compare UFC and WWE. They're completely different entities, and I feel like people compare them for some reason because like one's fake fighting, one's real fighting. I don't know.
I think it's when they're so far from real fighting and from, I guess, even wrestling, they have no idea what they're looking at.
Exactly, right? I think the UFC, despite how good of a fighter you can be in that cage, and I've interviewed a lot of UFC fighters that are awesome in the cage. Justin Gaethje, Tracy Cortez, who's out in Phoenix, great fighter.
Yes, amazing fighter. Hottest fighter on the roster, possibly.
Yeah, she's pretty cute. Very sweet, too. One of the sweetest women ever.
I bet it's sweet.
Conor McGregor, I can think of off the top of my head. Chael Sonnen is another one. Those are the top two guys I think on the mic are the best trash talkers in the game.
The best of all time.
Who else do you think would be in that category? Because I don't think anybody else can carry a fight headline-wise like Conor McGregor could. Even though, as a WWE enthusiast, you look at the well-scripted promos that The Rock can do, and Stone Cold Steve Austin, John Cena, unbelievable on the microphone. Conor McGregor says things that are off color that get people to pop, but like he's not very articulate. You know,
he
like,
might not be. I don't know, man. The early days of Conor McGregor, like 2013, 2014, 2015, those days were insane.
Yeah, well, because he was fired up. He was on his way up, and people were like, "Who is this guy?"
Firing off.
I remember 2016 UFC 205 Alvarez versus McGregor. We went to the press conference, and Conor showed up late on purpose, and we were just waiting for him. Like they had started the press conference already, and all of a sudden, you just see him like coming with his giant fur coat. And he's just like, sorry, I'm late. I just don't give a fuck. And everybody's just like, yeah. Like we're all in high school, just like losing our minds. There was a free press conference at Madison Square Garden. And you're just like, this guy's on another level. And then he beat Eddie Alvarez to become the first simultaneous double champ, right? He was
first champ.
He was the middleweight champion and featherweight.
Featherweight and lightweight.
Featherweight. Is there a middleweight champion? Is that a
there is? It's just a heavier weight. 50.
Okay,
he was that champ at 45 and 55.
55, okay. And it was the 55 matchup with Eddie Alvarez, right? And I remember that was the infamous, just like, I would like to take this time to apologize to absolutely nobody. The double champ does whatever the fuck he wants. And the entire crowd goes nuts again. Funny story about UFC 205. It was November 5th, 2016. We had gone to the press conference 2 days before. Me and my buddy took the train in from New Jersey into Manhattan, into Madison Square Garden, just to be there for the fight. We didn't have tickets. It was the first ever UFC event in New York City. That was when they first got like licensed to like have a fight in New York, because they did basically everything out of Vegas at that point. This was like 8 years ago. And it's freezing outside. And we're just like, man, we got to get into this fight. We got to get into this fight. And there's just like a bunch of like, what do you call them? Scalpers outside. And like the ticket stubs that they had for these had like holograms of like McGregor and Alvarez on it. Like they were just so cool. And there was this guy who, I kid you not, looked exactly like Michael Jackson in the Thriller video. Just like slick back black hair, bright red leather jacket. Is just like in the corner, like on the corner of Madison Square Garden, being like, psst, come over here. And we're like, all right, we'll come over here. He's like, I got tickets for you guys if you want, like the hologram tickets. Conor McGregor, Eddie Alvarez. I'm like, dude, he's got the real stubs. I'm like, yeah, I'm just gonna talk to my friend for a quick second. I'm like, dude, he's got the stubs. This is real deal. We got to get it. And it was like all the money we had on us, which was like $200 each, right? So we gave him $400 in cash for these tickets. Waiting in line, hour to get in. As we're like getting closer to the front, we're like looking at the tickets, and the barcode, usually like the barcode should be in like the middle of the ticket, like on the bottom. It was like cut off to the side a little bit. Like there was just like something off with the ticket. And we got up there and they're like scanning it. They're like, these aren't real tickets, guys. Oof. And then we were like, fuck. And then I convinced my buddy I'm like, dude, these are stubs. And I still have the ticket today. The ticket is awesome.
Dude, but it looks great.
The ticket is incredible, but like you'll see like the side of the code, it's like it's not a real ticket. And we had to freeze our asses off with no money. Our phones died. We didn't have chargers in the middle of New York City in November. And eventually his mom came to pick us up at like 2 a.m. because we were able to find someone who had a phone charger and charged one of our phones.
Wow.
But then we got back to our buddy's place just in time to see the main event.
I was about to say, how did you guys actually watch the fight?
Yep.
Wow.
We ended up getting back to Jersey just in time. Just in time for, it was Tyron Woodley versus Stephen Thompson.
Wow.
And that was the Wonder Boy fight where it looked like Woodley was just like kicking his shit in. And Stephen Thompson, I thought he was going to snap his neck. And it was a split. What was it? It was
I believe it was a split decision, if I'm not mistaken.
Split decision. Like nobody, it was like a tie pretty much, which was insane. What an insane like cliffhanger for such an insane fight leading up to the actual main event. Like that card was pretty legit.
Dude,
and then I
think
before that, who's Yoel Romero?
Yep, he fought
Chris, what's his name? Weidman?
Was that fight?
Yeah.
Wow.
Weidman got his just his head completely chopped off his body.
I forgot that was
Yoel
on that
Romero
card.
is a badass motherfucker, dude.
Dude, and he's still doing it. It's incredible.
Like his neck muscles are like you can't teach that.
Nothing like that, bro.
No.
He's got to have been made in like a Cuban lab or something.
Yeah, dude. He's built like you talk about Brock being built differently. Like Yoel Romero, you see him running, it's like that dude.
You know, when you bring up Conor McGregor's promos and how he talks in the press conference, is there more from someone that respects it and is so well versed in the rest of the pro wrestling side of it? Is there more of like an authentic feeling that you can feel from Conor, knowing that it's like not scripted, none of this is written?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like his word, like the way he articulates things are not always great, but it's like he's saying what's on his mind.
And are you saying articulate because of the accent, because of
Not necessarily. It's like sometimes he's just like "fuck you," you know, just saying that, and like people will go crazy. Versus in WWE, like The Rock can say something very charismatic, but he's like saying like he's rhyming, he's saying sentences, like he's using catchphrases. Where like Conor sometimes it's just like every time he says stuff, it's not very like well thought out. I would say it's kind of off the cuff.
it's a little quick and witty?
Yeah,
Would you say that?
exactly.
But it's almost like it almost always worked. It was like almost the exact
like your
right
wife
thing to
sent me
say.
DMs.
I loved it.
As his like ankle is snapped in half on the ground, Joe Rogan's like trying to get the interview.
Legendary.
Like Dustin Poirier is like celebrating, like holding his wife's hands, leaving the cage after a win, and Conor's just like desperately like, "Fuck you, your wife sent me DMs."
And you know why I think we all love it so much is because it's so authentic. Like you've seen it not work.
Yep.
And like you know every time that he's saying it, like it's like what the fuck? Because like why would you risk looking this stupid if it
Yeah.
doesn't work out?
Yep.
It's not scripted. You know it's possibly not gonna work out. And man, I think this would just made that Conor era so great. And like I don't know if we'll ever experience anything like that again.
No, I mean, every time you say that, something big happens. I remember growing up a Yankee fan when Jeter retired. I'm like, there's going to be no one like Derek Jeter. There's never going to be a captain in New York Yankee history. And here we are, Aaron Judge, the captain of the New York Yankees in 2024. So, like, things happen, and there's going to be someone else that completely revolutionizes the sport. It'll just probably take a long time.
What do you think about Logan Paul and his entrance into the WWE and
Love
pro
it.
wrestling universe?
At first, I was skeptical because I'm like, oh, great, a YouTuber who thinks he's the shit is going to come into this and get humbled. But I think Triple H would say this. I think John Cena has said this. I think anybody that's worked with Logan Paul thus far has said this. I don't think anybody has learned the game quicker in pro wrestling than Logan Paul has. With the lack of experience that he had going into it, for what he's been able to do, he's an unbelievable pro wrestler. I mean, from a charismatic promo mic skill side, you knew he was going to be great because you know he can talk and you know he's going to be a hateable character just because he's a douchebag YouTube type dude. Like that's kind of his vibe, right? But like the actual in-ring wrestling, Pat McAfee said it on his show earlier today, actually, because Pat McAfee got into the ring and has wrestled matches for WWE. When your body hits that canvas, it's wood. Like there's no padding, there's nothing. When your body hits those ropes, it's like barbed wire. Like, it hurts. Like, you can't just get into this without, you know, blood leaving your body and you being all bruised up the next day. Like, it takes a long time to get your body used to that, like, get the ring rust off and have that muscle memory to know it's like, this is what we're going to be putting our bodies through. It's not easy. For Logan Paul to come in this, he had a WWE Championship match, like, within the first year of him, like, a main event spot in front of, like, 50,000 people in his first year as a pro wrestler and put on a spectacle. Like, it is insanely impressive what he's been able to do. And he seems, out of the two Paul brothers, seems like the one that's learned from some mistakes that he's made and seems like a really good dude. Though I've heard mixed things about Prime and what they're going through and everything else. But, like, Logan Paul seems like a great dude where I'm still on the fence about Jake Paul, you know? He's the younger one and he's still a kid. He's like 25, 26, right? So, I don't know. I mean, Logan Paul's an insane athlete.
And he's actually a good pro wrestler
Yes.
because I wouldn't know how to look at it from that.
Yeah, he's a high flyer off the top rope, can do backflips. His WrestleMania 39 entrance at SoFi Stadium in Hollywood, he zip-lined from the top of the stadium into the ring,
Jesus.
which was an insane entrance.
From the top of the stadium?
Yeah.
We're talking hundreds of feet up. Wow.
Yeah, dude.
That's crazy.
Like, go-getter, like, takes a lot of balls to do stuff like that. So you got to respect what he's done.
Who would you like to see move over to pro wrestling that just hasn't made that jump yet?
I don't know if I've ever, like, intently looked at something like that. Like, McGregor coming over just from a promo bat. Like, if him and The Rock ever got in the ring and, like, just traded barbs over promo skills, like, it'd be incredible. I thought Ronda Rousey was going to be a big deal. Turned out to not be a big deal. And I just think she has a big ego, so that kind of got in the way.
Like, she didn't want to play a character, or?
No, I think she just, like, backstage politics. She wanted to be the main event every single night, and it's like, that's just not how it works. You got to give, like, people who are over with the crowd, that's what determines who's the main event, right? And I think everybody was just kind of, like, over her because she was all about herself. At least that's the way it seemed. She just came out with a new book and completely trashed WWE too. But Shania Blazer, is that her name? She was in the UFC or maybe Bellator at one point. She's now in WWE. That was the one I was thinking about earlier. I'm trying to think. Chael Sonnen would make a great, like,
oh my god,
he would make a great commentator in WWE.
I've never even thought of that.
He would make a great commentator because he's just a heel type persona. I used to watch Dan Le Batard's what was the show with his dad?
Oh my! Wow, I'm just thinking of See or No the game.
See. Dude, I always, because Katie Nolan did it with them for some time. Bomani Jones did it with them for some time. Don't tell me. I'm gonna guess it. Dan Le Batard. Highly questionable. Highly questionable was the name of that show. Dude. Oh, no. Oh, see, Poppy, what do you think? Oh, see
or no?
See. I don't know why that show didn't last the way it did. Like, it's just...
Poppy got too old. Because I'm a huge... Like, Dan Le Batard's like one of my...
But Le Batard got laid off by ESPN, didn't he?
Well, no, so... Poppy was in negotiations, right, for re-upping his contract. Asked for, like, an absurd amount, didn't think he'd get so that they wouldn't renew his contract. They said, okay, we'll renew your contract. Poppy's like, shit, I don't really want to do this. And then Chris Cody, one of the producers from the Dan Le Batard show, I can't remember what he did on air, but ESPN said that they were going to let go of Chris Cody. And Dan said, well, if you're going to let go of Chris, we're going to go too. And then he went off with John Skipper, and they started Meadowlark Media.
Right. Yep.
Crazy.
I mean, he was in a position where it's like, you don't have to work for a big outlet anymore. Like, your name alone, you're going to get the viewership and the ratings, which is fortunate. Kind of like similar to Tucker Carlson getting fired from Fox News. It's like, I'll just start doing stuff on Twitter. Makes 10 times more money than Fox is still currently paying him to pay out his contract.
Insane.
Even like a guy like Colin Cowherd, I think, could do his own thing. And like Stephen A. Smith in his contract negotiations right now with ESPN. It's like he could do his own thing.
What did he turn down? 18 million or something?
Like, I think 15 million he wants between 25 and 30 or something like that. Which, like, he's got the leverage.
Do you think he ends up getting that, though?
He could. I don't think ESPN wants to lose him. And I think Stephen A's got all the leverage, you know?
Do you think that the product that ESPN has put out has kind of been watered down?
Yeah, totally, dude. I mean, I remember when, like, Barstool Sports was, like, in their prime, I would say, like, 2017, 2018, 2019, where, like, a lot of people, like, were really turned on by that. There's still a lot of people, like, I'm not, like, into, like, all that raunchy stuff that they were able to do, but, like, it was a different thing, right? Where, like, ESPN's been, like, the corporate suits and, like, he did things a certain way, like
Super
ESPN,
Mickey Mouse, Super
ESPN,
PG.
Fox, TBS, CBS Sports, whatever. Barstool was, like, a new thing. And then on the East Coast, New York side, these two guys named Jimmy O'Brien and Jake Storiell started this company called John Boy Media, which is heavily influenced by New York Yankee baseball and just Major League Baseball in general. But they'll do all sports. They were funded $5 million from WWE, Dwayne Wade, CC Sabathia, and like the Savannah Bananas to run their shit. And they have their own company now in New York City. Wow. They're kind of like Barstool, but like not as raunchy. They're just like normal, cool fans who are very knowledgeable about sports and stuff. So it's just like all of these companies, The Ringer, what is Outkick? Is that an Outkick Media? There's just like so many different like media, and even Blue Wire, right? Like there's different media, sports media companies that are coming into this that are like knowledgeable fans that people can relate to, as opposed to the suit like a Stephen A. Smith or Shannon Sharp's unbelievable, but even that, it's like they're celebrities, and you can't really relate to celebrities unless you're like making the money they're making or like living the lifestyle they're living. So it's like these guys are just normal fans, and people can relate to that, you know, and that's what people want to see nowadays, as opposed to what ESPN has to offer these days. Because outside of Stephen A. Smith, Shannon Sharp, Molly, Charlie Arnold was there for a while, who was a big WWE person before she made the switch. Outside of those names, I can't really tell you an ESPN personality. I feel like they're all kind of nameless personalities that kind of just like they shuffle around.
Well, it seems like they've cut off a lot of their guys that were like, say, they're B-level stars. Like, of course, they still have their Stephen A's and whatnot, but like the Katie Nolans, for example, everyone that was like on that.
Where's Max Kellerman these days?
I think he's on ESPN Radio, if I'm not mistaken.
Wow, because he did First Take for years.
First Take before that, was it Sports Nation that he's amazing on, and he's always going to have
Michelle Cheadle.
Michelle Beadle.
See, that's how I don't know.
But that whole crew, I mean, when they had Jamal Hill, when they had Jamel Hill, I'm sorry, what's his name? They did Numbers Never Lie together. I always forget his name now.
Fighter?
No, I can't remember the brother's name. He was great though. I can't remember his name now. But I feel like a lot of those like great stars that they had that were like building up to what a Stephen A. is, they just cut them all off, I feel like.
I don't think anybody's coming close to Stephen A. I just, it's almost like they won't allow it in a sense.
They don't want anybody else to have that type of power kind of thing?
I get, because he's like the most charismatic guy they've ever had, and I don't think, even if they came close to having one like him, I don't think Stephen A. Smith would like allow him to enter the gates. Because like I remember when First Take was Stephen A. Smith and
Skip
Bayless, and like that's just like two charismatic hotheads going at it, right?
And on top of that, Skip thought he could take the star from ESPN to Fox.
Yeah,
which no one's been able to do that, right? Because there was that era where Fox was just throwing the bag at people and basically just
Shannon Sharp made himself a name with Fox, so.
But vice versa, like he took everything from Fox right back to ESPN viewership-wise with him. He was like the only reason why people started. I felt like why Undisputed really blew up. Because Skip was kind of struggling for a while until like, I mean not Skip, but Skip. I'm sorry. When Skip went over to
what's Skip doing now?
He's still with Fox,
right?
But they're getting like 100,000 views or something like that. Something really bad for that TV slot. And he's got his own podcast now that he's working on, but he's struggling as well. They're looking at possibly cutting Undisputed.
Ugh.
It's kind of crazy. Last few things before I get you out of here. Who are your top 5 Yankees of all time?
Damn, that's a good question. Derek Jeter. CC Sabathia. Nick Swisher. Man, Mariano Rivera. That's a good question. I'll go Andy Pettitte, number 5.
Wow.
The Southpaw.
Wow.
09 Yankees, baby.
Derek Jeter, number 1 all day.
Yeah. Yep. I think all those guys 09 with Jeter, CC, Pettitte, Swisher. Who else did I say? Rivera, yeah.
Rivera.
So all those guys on the 09 team, my favorite team of all time.
Have you ever gotten to meet Derek Jeter?
Never once. I've had opportunities, but financially it wasn't in the cards. So that's the other reason you want to make a ton of money in this space, because you got to invest some in order to meet some big names and take advantage of those opportunities, right?
Right.
So people say life's not all about money. It's like, it's not, but it helps.
It opens a lot of doors,
Opens
right?
doors, gives you a lot of options.
It's like the biggest connector there is out there.
Yeah, for better or for worse, man. But like I said, if you meet the right people, like there are great people out here in this world who make a lot of money. You know, I feel like people kind of associate money with asshole personalities, and there are a lot of them, but there are good people with good money. Find those people. The sky's the limit.
What is coming up for you that you're looking forward in either WWE or with the rest of the Yankee season?
WWE is on fire right now. Money in the Bank in Toronto on July 6th. SummerSlam in Cleveland on August 3rd. A lot of things going down storyline-wise between the Bloodline, Cody Rhodes, CM Punk, Drew McIntyre. A lot of returns happening lately. So the Wyatt family, so the guy I was telling you about who died, his family, his brother is leading a new faction now in memory of him, which is unbelievable. They just debuted. So WWE's on fire right now. Yankee baseball, it's give or take right now. They were the best team in baseball for the first 4 months of the year. They've lost each of their last 3 series, so kind of going through a cold spell. But I'm hoping this is their year. First time in 15 years since that 09 team to win a World Series. We'll see, though.
Better hitter of the baseball, Shohei Ohtani or Aaron Judge?
Ohtani. It's not even close. I am a Yankee fan, but and Aaron Judge is a once-in-a-lifetime talent. Shohei Ohtani's on a whole nother level. He's better than Babe Ruth. Shohei Ohtani might be the most talented baseball player to ever step foot on a diamond.
Is it even a question at this point?
I don't think it is. I think there was going to be a major issue if it turned out that he had lost that $17 million earlier.
Do we really not think he lost that $17 million? Come on now.
I'm still on the fence. Imagine your best friend having access to your bank account and losing $17 million. I don't care. All right, let's put it in our perspective. If someone had access to my bank account and I lost $17, I would know, right? How do you not know that $17 million was missing from your bank account? You either did it and it's a cover-up, or you're completely financially illiterate.
And I mean, he already has the knowledge that this money is missing, and they're sitting next to each other in a dugout, and they're playing with flipping the bottles, I believe, and laughing back and forth.
Yep. And then he was fired the day of.
I mean, is Shohei that great of an actor as well?
Well, that's the big thing about him is that he can't speak English, so he can't actually answer any of the questions, right?
Yeah.
So,
I almost I don't, because I know a lot of.
Can you imagine if he actually spoke fluent English? And this was just
I
his
heard
way.
he does. I heard he speaks very well English.
He's the best baseball player in Major League Baseball. He's going to be a star for years to come. I feel like at some point he's smart enough to know the language, or at least should be smart enough to understand the language in the country that he's going to be playing baseball for the next decade.
I think he understands it, and he just, to avoid having to be in front of the cameras and talking that much, he just doesn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard
Which
that.
is smart, man. The media sucks. It's all a bunch of nerdy writers in baseball.
Oh yeah, we suck.
There's no former players that are in the media at these games interviewing people, which is why I feel like Shannon Sharp is fun because he played, right? He played in Super Bowls. He could talk about it versus Skip Bayless coming after you with all of his you're just a fan, dude, who just happens to also do his homework. I mean, not to take anything away, it's really hard what he does, and to get to that level takes a lot of work. But you have, at the end of the day, we were all fans in this versus the guys that actually experienced all of that. Mm-hmm. So it's hard, especially Shohei Ohtani doesn't give a shit about the nerdy writers that are asking him questions. He's like, I got to do it. It's part of my contract, but I'm gonna work around some loopholes. So I'm not gonna give you guys. Players never give writers the answers that they're looking for. Derek Jeter was the king of saying a lot of things that basically meant nothing. He said a lot of words that basically meant go fuck yourself. But they were good enough for reporters to walk away before they realized oh shit, he gave me nothing.
The captain.
That's all he does.
He was the best at it, I feel like.
Yeah, dude. 20 years straight in New York City, the toughest market to play sports, to win 5 world championships, to date as many celebrities as he dated, models, actresses, supermodels. Nobody had any dirt on him. How do you not respect the captain?
What do you think of his post-career moves, especially with what's happened with the Miami Marlins and whatnot?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a success, but he tried. You know how hard it is to own a Major League Baseball team? I was watching the documentary of him talking about how he had to put together a team of billionaires to buy the Marlins. It's even with the money he made, he couldn't afford that on his own. Mm-hmm. It's crazy. And then he went all in on it, and it just didn't work out the way he wanted it to. So
it almost feels like it's never has with the Marlins, though, right?
That's Miami. They had an all-star team, man. They really did, and they still lost 90 games. So
it's insane.
It's just the vibe.
I appreciate you so much. We are at the end. Where can everybody find all of your content and everything you're doing, Jack?
Comment, like, and subscribe on our YouTube channel at Jack O'Hara TV. Follow me on Instagram. And if you want to get connected, DM me. my DMs are open. Always wanting to connect with people, man.
That's the best. I appreciate you so much, Jack. Thank you. We'll be in touch. I can't wait to do it again. Have you made it public that you were doing a little bit of a move to Vegas?
Oh yeah, I tell everybody that I can, dude. I am setting sail and taking my talents to Sin City
That's crazy. I can't wait to get up here. I feel like we'll be doing a little bit more content.
all the time, dude. That's why I'm coming here to do stuff with a ton of great people that want to collaborate. So
Hell yeah, well, I appreciate it. Thank you guys so much. Still Friends Show, episode 89. See you guys next time.